I did not
Okay.
come here, to live for somebody, right? I came here to live for myself. But then,
Because in London, that's where you're going to get your better half. If you come to Northern Ireland, you will be single forever.
if you're working in NHS, the salary is generally not good. So for you,
Would you consider London a place you'd want to raise your children?
you
I
have to
mean,
compromise on your privacy, sharing kitchen, and sometimes even toilet facilities with everything about London is just so expensive. Even food, you realize, apart from the fact that London can be a bit expensive, overpopulated, and all of that, there is always a good side to everything. Let me speak
I
for
always emphasize, do not go and live in London. London is expensive. London is overpopulated. You live in box houses. But this is my perspective from what I've gathered about London or what I've seen when I was in London. But today we have a special guest who lives in London, and she's going to be telling us all about London from her own perspective, like someone who lives and works in London. Welcome to my channel, Dina. We are happy to have you.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me, Popo.
Before we dive into all about London, just briefly tell us about yourself and all that.
Okay, so my name is Diana. I'm an overseas nurse. I was practicing in Ghana, and I obviously went through the whole process of writing IELTS, CBT, OSCE, and all of that to become a registered nurse in UK. So I've been practicing for almost 4 years now. So I live in southern part of London, and I'm currently working in an NHS hospital.
Okay. So, like someone who works in an NHS hospital, we
Mhm.
always say if you're working in the NHS, the salary is not that high enough
Yeah,
for you to live and stay in London. I
I
don't know
know.
whether that is true. What is your opinion on that as someone who lives and works in London?
So actually, the reason why I got to move to London was because of the job. It was the job that made me stay where I am.
Mm-hmm.
If I did a video about why I left the bedside, right, and then got the job that I'm currently doing, it got to a point where I was tired of the bedside due to some personal reasons and what I went through during the pandemic and all of that. So I got fed up, and the job I was looking for was in London. It was being advertised. I was just searching online, and the job I got, which I really did love, was in London. So I just have no choice. I had no choice than to just take up the opportunity. And for anybody who lives and works in London, one thing I'll always say is London is not that bad if you are earning good salary. If you are working in NHS, the salary is generally not good. So for you to actually take that decision of moving from wherever you are just to live in London, I would say that you have to think twice.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, what is more expensive in London? Is it the rent? Is it the food? Is it, or it's just everything generally?
Everything about London is just so expensive. Even food, you realize that if you buy something in any other part of the UK, the prices are just over exaggerated in London, and the rent is the most expensive. Rent is just expensive everywhere in UK, and the rent takes like a majority out of our salary. But in London, it's so exaggerated. The amount, I would say, is more than tripled. And sometimes when you look at the prices of 1-bedroom flat, 2-bedroom flat, it beats your imagination. For whatever amount you will spend on even a tiny studio flat, that amount can rent you like a whole 3-bedroom flat somewhere else in UK. Even in England, even in some parts of England, what you pay for a studio flat in London can rent you like a whole house. It may be, for instance, the northern part of England. There is always pros and cons, to live in any part of the UK. But if you are thinking of moving to London, just for the sake of rent alone, I will say that you have to consider your decision, unless of course there's a genuine reason or there's an urgent reason for you to move to London, especially if you are also from overseas like some of us are. You really have to think twice. And if you have family, it's even worse. Like a family of 3, you cannot rent 1-bedroom flat for for a family of 3. It's not even allowed. The regulations does not even allow that. So if you're moving to London and you have a family, you are thinking about like 2-bedroom or even 3-bedroom flats. So if you are working in NHS with a band 5 salary or even a band 6, then you can just imagine all your money at the end of the month is going to go into rent. So you just have to think of, I mean, so you just have to think twice, especially if you have family. Even if you are single, it's still
So
too
would
much,
you?
because if you are single, you can decide to maybe rent a room in a shared apartment. But if you are not used to living in shared apartment like some of us are back home, then it's like you have no choice than just to live in a tiny little room in a shared house. You have to compromise on your privacy, sharing kitchen, and sometimes even toilet facilities with others. I am lucky I got a studio flat, so I don't share anything with anybody. But back home we are used to living in big houses, so the living situation in abroad is kind of surprising to most of us. So I managed to get a studio flat so that I would not have the trouble of sharing toilets and kitchen and stuff like that with somebody. So I mean, all in all, it's not too bad. For me, it was just because of the love of the job I got. That was what made me move to where I am living at the moment.
Okay. So if it was because of the love of the job,
Mhm.
considering the economic system and everything, and all your your bills, your electricity, your gas, your everything, do you think the move was worth it?
For me, I love the job. If you take me anywhere else in UK and give me the same job I'm doing, then I would be okay. If not, for me, because I live within my means, I
Mm-hmm.
budget my money. And like I said, I live in a studio flat and it's all inclusive. Thank God I got a studio flat that was all inclusive. So I don't pay council tax, I don't pay electricity, I don't pay gas and all of that. So once I pay my monthly rent, everything is inclusive.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't have to pay. But if I was going to pay bills on top, then it would have just been too much for me. So at least it's not too bad for me, and it's also within easy commute to my hospital. It's just one stop on a train. So all in all, it's still a bit okay for me. And honestly, I'm not here with my family, so I don't like living in isolated places. Otherwise, I will feel so depressed. I mean, living in this country altogether. So in London, there is always a lot to see. There is always so much to do. So for me,
Mm-hmm.
it's honestly okay. Honestly, I really do enjoy life over here. There is always something for you to see. I mean, you never get bored. Honestly, you never
Okay.
get bored living in London. So I've
Mm-hmm.
lived in northern part of England before, and I
Mm-hmm.
didn't really enjoy it.
Why?
So if you should give me a job offer that is paying massively, then maybe I'll consider moving to the northern part of England. Otherwise, I'm just happy where I am. Honestly.
Why were you not happy where you were? Was it because of the place, or it was because of the work environment?
Oh, it was just because of the weather. Honestly, for me, it was the
Yeah.
weather, and I didn't have friends over there. I didn't have family over there, so everything was just too depressing for me. But
Okay.
here, there is always a lot to see because I'm not here with my family. So I always want to be where I can have some form of excitement. Otherwise, living abroad in general can be so boring, especially how the social life in UK can be. So if you are not here with your family, it can be so boring. So for me, I just like to be where I can have some form of, I mean, like belongingness, exactly. Some kind of fun.
Okay. So I understand that you want to have fun and stuff like that.
Mm,
So I want to find out in terms of dating in London, because here in Northern Ireland, it's very difficult to actually find a person to date and all that, because um we don't have as many, because most of the time we'd want to date, maybe if I'm from Africa, I want to date someone from Africa, I want to date someone from Nigeria, I want to date someone from Ghana.
yeah.
Lying. Okay, I want to date someone from Ghana and all that. So is it that is it's not that easy here in Northern Ireland, because we don't have of course we do have people from Africa, but we are not as much populated as
Yeah.
London,
Yeah.
because when I got to London, I was shocked at the number of people of color that I saw.
Mm-hmm.
Because here I'm used to, you can walk in the street and it's just the two of you amongst 1,000, or the three of
Yeah.
you or four of you amongst 1,000. But when I got to London, it was 70 of us amongst 100 or 1,000 and stuff like that. There were many blacks, there were many Indians, there were many people
Mm-hmm.
from Pakistan. there's cultural diversity. So is it
Yeah.
easy to get someone to date in London?
You can be in London, and still not meet people. It all depends on how outgoing you are. So if you are the type of person that you just go to work and then come back home, you don't really fellowship with, any community or any church, and you are just like from work straight to home, it will be very difficult unless maybe you are interested in this online dating stuff. But some of us, we are not really used to this. We never really knew about it until we actually got here. But if you are the type who would want to obviously mingle with the people you are familiar with, then what you need to do, just try and be like outgoing. If you have a church that's an African church, try and then as much as possible try and be involved in church activities. With that, it's so easy, to meet people. You could also meet people, through recommendation from friends, from family members and all of that. So yeah, there are lots. Sometimes you just be walking on your street and you hear somebody speaking your own language. It makes you feel like you're actually home. You hear somebody shouting a Ghanaian language as if you are just walking on the streets of Ghana. It's so fun, living in Ghana. And sometimes you feel like you are home. So that's one good thing about living in this area.
So, in your opinion, are there advantages of living in London? And if they are there, what are the advantages of living in London compared to other places?
Yeah. Apart from the fact that London can be a bit expensive, overpopulated, and all of that, there is always a good side to everything. Let me speak from my own perspective. So for me, I don't really like this. I'm always very, very picky when it comes to food. So if you are the type of person who would always want to eat food you are familiar with from your culture, London is the best place. Sometimes I can sleep in the comfort of my own home and then order on my phone local Ghanaian food and will just be delivered right in front of my door. If you don't want to cook, you can always walk by and you see so many African restaurants that you can actually walk in, sit down, eat, and then come back home. And the more you go out, the more you are even likely to meet people who are from your own culture, and you get to see what's going on. They tell you a lot, you learn a lot from them. And also, if you want to go shopping, there are so many African shops around. Within like 100 meters, you can see like 3 or 4 African shops all lined up.
Wow.
And you can always get whatever you want. So I always eat the kind of food I want. Yeah, but there are some areas within the UK that you hardly see even your own people. You hardly see African shops. It's so difficult to get access to certain things. So for me personally, I will be so depressed living in such areas. I did not come here, to live for somebody, right? I came here to live for myself. But then I just know what I want. I know what makes me happy. And so I go for it. People will have different perspective, which is fine. But that's one good thing about living in London. You don't struggle to get certain things that you really, really want. Yeah. And also, if you don't have a car, it's easy for you to live in London because access to buses, train, underground, it's all over. So no matter where you're going, you can always get trains, buses, underground trains, and connect you to every part of London that you want to go. Although it might be a bit expensive, but if you really have to travel, you don't really need a car to travel around. But there are some areas.
How can you drive in London? It's difficult to drive in London.
I honestly don't drive. I don't drive. There are areas within London that is like, high cost. You have to, pay certain some amount of money to even be able to drive within that area. So I don't drive. But then I can get access to train, to underground, to buses, to wherever I want to go. So there are some areas in UK that if you don't drive, it's so difficult to live there because access to buses is very limited. Access to trains, there is one train comes like every 30 minutes or so. But in London, every 2 minutes, every 3 minutes, there is a bus passing by. So you can go everywhere that you want to go within London, even if you don't drive. Yeah, so that's one good thing as well.
All right.
And also another thing is the government knows that London is a bit expensive, so they kind of give you a little bit on top of your salary. So I am currently working as a band 6 in NHS. So there is always we get like 500 and something, almost £600 extra. So for a band 6 living in northern part of England will not get the same salary as I get because they know it's a bit expensive. So if I was kind of living in a shared accommodation, whereby I was going to pay like £500. That £500 that we get on top would have been enough to cater for the rent. So the rest of the salary is yours. So if you're able to live within your means and you don't mind living in a shared apartment as a single person, you can actually survive in London. So it's not that bad at all.
So now you have highlighted advantages of living
Mm-hmm.
and working in London, and I really love those advantages. I mean, it's nice to meet people that you are familiar with, you can relate to, and eat food that you want. I love food, and I would enjoy
Mm-hmm.
eating my own food. Of which this site is very hard to get food from my own country and all
Mm-hmm.
that. And people who have lived in London and come here to Northern Ireland, I remember a colleague of mine, she was complaining about not being able to get food nearby, local, like food from home nearby and all that. Yeah. So, are there any disadvantages of living in London?
Yeah,
Because
when I
the
talk about
advantages
the
are brilliant. Are there any disadvantages? All right.
so I will say that with the disadvantages, right? If you have family, then you may struggle a little bit in London because of the high cost of living and the high cost of accommodation, especially. So, like I said, if you're a single person and you don't mind living in a shared apartment, you can live within your means in a small room, minding your own business and all of that. But if you are here with family, London may not be the best place for you, because if you have like, if it's like a husband and a wife with 2-3 kids, you cannot afford to live in London, because all your money will go into rent and bills, and that will be it. You cannot even save. So that is with the accommodation. You end up spending all your money on your rents, especially if you are here as a family. And number two, sometimes you hear of crime rates. I mean, news about knife crime, gun,
Yes.
and all of that. The probability of you having such stuff going on in areas that are overpopulated is very, very high. So I remember there was a news some years ago in a market, in an open market, where there was a gunshot and people were, killed. But this again can happen anywhere else.
Yes.
If it was to happen. Yeah. So for that crime rate, I cannot really say much, because you never know, what will happen, So, but then that is still
higher in London than anywhere else.
Yeah, exactly, because it's overpopulated. There are so many people from all over the world. You never know the kind of person you even be walking past. Just have to bear that in mind, and then just be careful, when what time you go out, just make sure when you are going out, you don't really stay out so late. Just look after yourself and you should be fine, regarding that aspect. And also, let me go back to the point about family. Because of this crime rate and everything, if you are moving from overseas and you are thinking of bringing your kids, then the issue of you raising your kids also become a problem, you see. But so you never know the kind of people that your children might even get themselves associated with. So you really have to be very, very, very careful with that when you are thinking of bringing your family along, especially with kids. You have to really, really consider, moving to London if you are coming with kids, because of this issue of crime rate. People go to schools and they form gangs, and you never know what they learn. It can turn into something else. So if you have family and you have kids, then I would say that you should reconsider if you're thinking of moving to London, just for the reason of these crime rates and gang and all of that.
All right. So, seeing in London there is cultural diversity,
Mm-hmm.
would you consider it a place where there is racism or not? Because I know in some parts of UK, if there are few people from outside UK, let me say if there are few Indians, few blacks, Pakistanians, and stuff like that, there is racism. So, is there much racism in London, in your opinion?
So I will say this based on work and then like social life. If you are working in an area where you find yourself being the only black person, then you would experience that. But London is a place where you go to a particular ward and you realize that majority of the nurses are blacks, or from other overseas countries. You only go to a ward and find a few people who were actually born here, whites or British. So you don't really get to experience much of that racism when it comes, like our normal world environment, because majority of us are from overseas. So who are you going to discriminate about? We are all from overseas. We are all from the same country. We are all from the same Africa. I mean, but then in that same work environment, if you find yourself in a particular directorate where there are a lot of whites compared to, blacks, that is where you experience that racism thing. Or that is where you feel like sometimes you feel inferior or a bit discriminated against. But then you can still experience the same racism everywhere. But then I think it's a bit low over here, because majority of people in London, there are people from all over the world in London. So we are all from overseas. We are all migrants. So you kind of experience it, especially if you find yourself working in an environment where you are more like the only black person over there, or if just a few black people and majority of white. That's when you might experience that. Otherwise, in terms of the social aspects, there are a lot of cultural diversity, so it's a bit okay maybe compared to some other parts of the UK where like majority of them are white. There are some white communities and black communities. There are some areas that are white dominated. So in such areas, if you find yourself to be the only black person or just a few, sometimes you just be walking on the street and they will just be opening their windows and looking at you. Wondering, what is this person doing in this area?
I remember
I have this white friend.
How we do in our African culture when we've got I was carrying it. I was expected that day. I had something in my head, They all came out. The neighbors, they were busy just peeping. Said, did you see? She was carrying whatever we call it.
They would just be wondering, what's going on? I have this white friend of mine. She told me, you need to come and live in the white community. So if you happen to be a black person living in this area that my friend is talking about, the moment you go out, everybody, these people, they will just open their curtains and they just be staring. Like the moment they see you coming, they just run quickly into them. So and they have a way of making some funny comments, and no one will tell you that they are saying this because you are who you are. But all in all, you just have to know the reason why you came here. And if you realize you find yourself in an environment where you are being bullied because of any reason, you just have to put people in their right places. When I came here initially, when we were still struggling to do our OSCE, the slightest mistake, they will just blame it on us, the overseas nurse, to extend where a healthcare assistant said those OSCE nurses. Imagine such a comment. So those OSCE nurses. So everything was kind of blamed on us because we are those people. We are considered as not really familiar with the system, so we don't know anything. So obviously, every mistake is from us. So you can experience this honestly everywhere.
That's a very interesting topic, and I know we can talk forever. But thank you so much for coming and sharing this information with us. And from what I gather, you have said that London is not too bad, especially if you are a single person.
Yeah.
So if you are constantly moving to London and you are single, it can be good for you as long as you are able to live within your means, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah. So guys, for those who want to go to London, you need to be a singleton, because in London, that's where you're going to get your better half. If you come to Northern Ireland, you'll be single forever. So guys, this is all that we wanted to share with you. And Diana, thank you so much for coming to
You're welcome.
Channel. Yeah. So guys, don't forget to visit her channel. I'm sure you have seen, I usually post her videos here and there. Go and subscribe to her channel. She's got great content and she has love. And next time I'll see you in her channel.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Pauline, for having me. If anybody wants any information at all regarding working in London or living in London, or if there's anything in particular that you want to ask, I'm happy to. You can drop it in the comment section. I'm happy to respond, because I'm sure somebody might have received like a job offer in London and is contemplating as to whether to take it or not. So if there is anything in particular that you really need information about, or you really need in-depth help with, I'm happy to respond as much as I can. So thank you so much, Pauline, for having me. I'm so
Thank you so
excited
much,
to be on
Tina.
Pauline's channel, honestly. If you're an overseas nurse and you don't know about Pauline, then honestly, I don't know what you are waiting for. Please subscribe to her channel. Thank you so much, Pauline, for having me. I'm so
Thank
excited
you.
to be here. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.